All right, boys. Woo, we are back for another episode of the Get Fucked Treehouse podcast. Welcome back. What is this, week 11? Week 11, episode 4. We got a lot to talk about. We're going to do some quick game recaps at the start. We got some hot takes, some power rankings at the end. We'll do some more grade the trade. We've had more trades recently, including one yesterday, as well as a Saquon trade a couple weeks ago. And then we're going to talk more generally, I think, about trades and the trade market. And I'm going to give some thoughts from a commissioner standpoint on kind of what my perspective is from selling. But before we do all that, I think we got to take a shot. Get
Oh
things
yeah.
started.
And just so people know, this is 10 a.m. right now.
Yes, this isn't the earliest we've filmed. So I'm sure Abby will be thrilled about this. But and Bill's trees that he's going to be cutting down. Bill, make sure you check in with us later this afternoon to make sure you
Dude,
didn't
exactly.
like slice a hand off.
You know, in the chainsaw manual, it says you shouldn't be drinking, but it's okay.
All right, cheers. Here we go. Get fuck treehouse.
Cheers, guys. Truth serum.
Oh,
Oh, that was too big of a shot.
the most hungover I've been in a while, by the way, and so this is not a good combination.
All
Puke.
right.
All right, here we go. Whew, another episode. So here we go, episode 4. Let's get right into it. We have a lot. We have a lot to talk about this episode. I'm going to kick things off with a game recap. All right, so let's do this. Week 10, a big week for our league, big implications. Obviously, there's only 4 weeks left in the season. Every week matters. Week 10, let's kick things off. We had we're going to start with David and Fenchie. Definitely the worst of the two matchups. Let's see, Fenchie takes this one home, 513 to 482. Another low point showing. Not ideal, not great for the league. David gets another decent outing from Russell Wilson. Other than that, a lot of mediocrity across the league. DK Metcalf got a good outing out of Dalton Kincaid as well, 45 points. Sounds like David's probably bullish there a little bit. On Fenchie's side, though, he comes away with the win, 513 points, primarily on the backs of Javonte and George Kittle. Puts up another 69-point outing. Nice. And takes it home for Fenchie, 513, 482. Bill, what's your reaction? We got David and Fenchie here. Fenchie needed this win to stay alive. How are you feeling about these guys?
Yeah, I mean, it's always nice to get a win when you only score 513. So I don't want to call it a cheap win. A win's a win, but good for Fentress staying alive.
Any thoughts on Fenchie's survival and potential contention?
Interesting, the Bills comment. If you think 513 is a cheap win, there's another matchup that you're gonna love later.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, Russell Wilson's kind of bounced back. Denver's sort of winning. Sean Payton, maybe getting some validation. Bijan had a good game, and David's housing 3 tight ends on his roster. It's an interesting move going forward. Fenchie just squeaked by against probably the worst team, but I think both teams are fairly well set up for David for the future. Fenchie to maybe make a run this season.
Yeah, we'll see if he can turn the corner. Speaking of cheap wins, we'll go to matchup number 2. A victory, Pesh over Curtis, 518 to 416. Kurt, a 416, not good. Doesn't buy a pizza yet, at least in this matchup, but gets 70 points out of Austin Eckler. Everything else was bad. The quarterbacks are bad. So preview for a grade the trade coming up later this afternoon or later this episode. But overall, just a bad outing from Curtis, 416 points. Pesh on the other side, 518. On the backs of Burrow, unfortunately, going down last night, 2 nights ago, Thursday night. So we'll talk more about that in a second. Burrow had a good outing last week. He at least won you this game before he went down. Amon-Ra, a huge outing, 94 points. Mike Evans, a big outing as well, 83 points. Pesh takes the win, 518 to 416. Pesh, how'd you feel about this victory last week against Kurt?
I think, a lot of my players played well. It's surprising I did this with Trevor Lawrence getting 20 points. Like, he's kind of been a bust for me since that trade with Sean. Hasn't done much. Even Mark Andrews didn't have a huge game, but it was enough to beat Kurt, who, for him, the big thing for Curtis was the Eagles were on bye, so he was missing Swift, Devontae Smith. He had a few buys. I don't know if it would have made a huge difference, but, he doesn't really have quarterbacks.
Yeah. Bill, your thoughts on Kurt's team and a 416 outing here?
Yeah, that's disappointing performance. You can't let Pesh get a win here, scoring 515 or 518 or whatever he scored. Poor performance by Kurt. Pesh, the question to you is, do you activate Jonathan Taylor? He put up 51 last week, so is it time to activate him? Are you going to try to make a run? We'll see what happens there.
Yeah, we can chat more about that in a second here. Going to the next matchup, So, Bill, you bought a pizza, 4-11, not a great week for you. Mac, on the other hand, continues to surge. It's, I believe, 5 wins in a row now for Mac, all the way up into second in the standings. He puts up a 650. So quite a walloping he gives you. On your end, Derrick Henry, 9 points scares you. Jonnu Smith only got 1 point. A good outing from Jamar Chase, but of course his stock might be trending down now with Burrow. So otherwise, a lot of mediocrity. Dotson, you given Pesh shit for stealing his Dotson, and you stole 0 points from Pesh with that outing. So 4-11 underwhelms for certain for the #1 offseason team going into the season. On the flip side, Mac, Mac explodes 130 out of Geno. He gets another 117 out of Jared. An interesting combo, those two quarterbacks, but for now they continue to produce. And of course, CeeDee Lamb is on the hot streak of his life. 117 points. He puts up 650. It wasn't enough for a pizza. We'll get to that in a second, but it was enough to beat you by 240 points. How did that feel? Couldn't have felt good.
No, this was brutal. I've had a couple really bad losses lately. Mac this past week and Fenchie a couple weeks ago. So it's been a rough skating the last few weeks. But you look at Mac's team and it's like he's got his quarterbacks are Geno and Jared Goff. And as much as I want to hate on them, they come out and put up a combined 250 points on me. So props to Mac. Maybe he knows something I don't.
Maybe. We'll go on to the next matchup for time here. Another beatdown, myself over Dooley. Dooley puts up 433. Dooley's prospects are slim here. He sits in 8th place. He's in a must-win situation this week. We'll get to that in a moment. He gets 60 points out of Najee Harris, so a nice little bounce back there. David Montgomery continues to have a role, even with the emergence of Jahmyr Gibbs, another 66 points here. And CJ Stroud looks like Dooley's future here, another 95-point outing. So, some bright spots, but 433 overall for Dooley. On the flip side, Bill sends me a pizza, 670 out of Olave when you call me Big Dobbins, and that includes 350 at the quarterback spot. So a massive outing from Dak Prescott. Him and CeeDee Lamb are on an absolute tear. 210 points out of Dak. You could Chris Olave finally gets a touchdown, but the story here is Dak, an explosion, and Herbert ho-hum adds 150. So a big outing, 670 worth of pizza. Is Dooley out of this thing? And what are his prospects moving forward?
From my side, I think lucky matchup for Hassett. Commissioner gets Mahomes and fantasy incompetence the 1 week Mahomes is on bye. So, it was kind of a walkover win for him. Didn't really need to splurge on 670 points this week.
Yeah, I was going to say the buys, they really matter when you put up the highest score of the week, but go ahead, Bill, your reaction.
Like Pesh said, Mahomes and fantasy incompetence without Mahomes, what are you? You're just fantasy incompetence. So disappointing performance by Dooley. Like you said, I think we predicted it coming. So huge win by Hassett. Congrats on the pizza. Take a picture and post it to the group.
Yeah, I will. I actually have not actually cashed in on any of my pizzas this year, so I'm going to throw a pizza party and I'll send you guys all a pic. Go ahead, Pesh.
Quick thing, it's funny because for CJ Stroud just passing 96 points, probably a down week for him for this season. He's been a pretty surprising quarterback. I'm used to seeing over 100 for him. So 96 for him is actually maybe a down week. It's kind of surprising how well he's done.
Yeah, he's had a pretty crazy year. Before we get into too much convo, let's do the last matchup here. It was the closest matchup. Sean sneaks one out, 560 over DH, 556. I want to say, what was this? This had some Monday night implications, I think. I'm scanning the rosters. I can't remember exactly. I think DH made a comeback. Didn't quite get there with Sean. On DH's end, he makes the trade for Rachaad White. We'll talk about that in a second. White puts up another 60 points. Brian Robinson, a huge game, multiple touchdowns, 90 points himself. A few stinkers, though, that brought him down. Tight end position, quarterback continues to be a sore spot. So I wasn't able to quite muster up the 560 points that Sean was able to put up on the backs of Keenan Allen with a 120. So CeeDee Lamb, Keenan Allen both go off last week, and Sam Howell puts up another 133. 560. It would have been an interesting stolen win from DH. Instead, the story is Sean keeps surging. What's your reactions here? Bill, let's start with you.
Keenan Allen, 121 points. My goodness. I was looking at the draft board a couple days ago, and my main takeaway was that I should have drafted Keenan Allen when Sean did. So he's really performing, and it's helping Sean's team a lot down the stretch. On DH's side, man, this was almost like the last grasp at playoffs, and he couldn't quite do it. So that's disappointing for his team.
Yeah. What's your thoughts on Sean's team moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think the game ended up being close because, going into that Monday night game, I believe it was Denver versus Buffalo, and Sean had a little bit of lead, but he had a
Oh, that's right.
huge favor because he had Josh Allen to play, and Josh Allen almost cost Sean that game, putting up 60 points in a game where most people thought against Denver's defense he put up like 150, and they were watching the games. He kept throwing picks, He brought himself back negatively to almost let DH win that game. DH,
Yeah.
I mean, showing from Derek Carr, unfortunately had a concussion. And Keenan Allen, I mean, that's one of my staple guys. He's one of those old guys that were always a staple on my team, like him and Montgomery. And this season, last season I had him and he was like injury ridden, high ankle sprain. And like, so I kind of finally cut ties with him and like, decided to stay healthy all season and put up the numbers I've known he can do. But he is getting older, so how long it lasts.
Pesh, how much does that sting to see Sam Howell with 133 next to his name?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely hurts. I do get a little bit of solace from seeing DJ Moore right above him with 28 points. But like, yeah, do I wish I had Sam Howell? Yes. Am I someone who believes in Sam Howell? Yes. I from the start loved him as a quarterback for the Redskins or Commanders. Sorry, keep this politically correct. But I don't have faith in the rest of the support around him to be consistent. But he has been consistent. He's like a top 5 quarterback right now.
Yeah, he is. So that finishes up week 10. Good outings around the game, a few blowouts, a few close games. A few games with implications in the middle. Sean sneaks out a win. The top continue to win. And Fenchie gets a much needed win. So good week 10 as we move on to week 11. Not too much in terms of fab. Our only notes here, notes from around the league. Tyson Chandler, 5 bids. $17 to Sean. A good bid for him with the potential concussion or the injury. Was it concussion? Injury to Alexander Madison. But Ty Chandler looked pretty decent. Got him for $10. Looks like got him for 17. Next closest bid was 10. 10-8. Looks like we had 5 guys or so. So that's the most noteworthy ad in terms of the last few weeks since we last chatted. I think any other thoughts from you guys on week 10, or are we straight into hot takes with Pesh?
Sorry, it's Ty Chandler, not Tyson. I don't know why I assumed Tyson, but Ty. I haven't watched him play. Sean's inserting him straight into his lineups. Like, this might be one of those players that might have keeper implications because, like, if he runs with it, he may take the reins, and Madison might be, on the outside looking in.
Yeah, I like this aggressive managing style by Sean. He sees a player he likes, he goes out, he spends a lot of money on him, and he starts him. So we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, I think especially with the Madison injury makes sense for Sean. A good bid here. Another UNC guy. A lot of Tar Heels in the NFL right now. So moving on to hot takes, Pesh. Why don't you kick us off? We had a big week 10. We've games popping in terms of the running back position. Why don't you take us through your first hot take?
Yeah, I think this merges well off of what we were just talking about. It was like handcuffs. And this season, actually, there's been a lot of turnover at the running back position, maybe more than recent years. And there's a lot of people who drafted handcuffs who were like late rounds of the draft. If you look at it, a lot of people got backups and rookies and handcuffs, and some of them have panned out. Some of them for the Cleveland Browns. I know Fenchie was holding on to Kareem Hunt. Jerome Ford for David had a few weeks. The Ravens running backs with Dobbins always getting hurt, and that's kind of where we're sitting right now. I think there's new names emerged. This guy named Keaton Mitchell. I think he's gonna be a stud. He looks good. He passes my eye test, which is the most important thing in evaluating running back in the NFL that draft scouts look at is the Pesh eye test, and he passed with flying colors. I think he's gonna take the reins. I don't think they're gonna look back. I think Mike's wasted 3 years on J.K. Dobbins. I don't think he's coming back to starting position there.
I'd agree with that. You mentioned Keaton Mitchell. I am excited about having Keaton Mitchell on my team. Having Keaton Mitchell on my team is like having a Ferrari in the garage. It's like I could take a garage when I want. The guy's a monster. We're gonna all see this later on. So
when are you going to take him out of the garage? I guess is the next question. Then, do you have any plans to start this guy? Do you believe in him that much?
Yeah, I think he's gonna have a breakout. He's gonna have a breakout one of these weeks, and it's up to John Harbaugh. John Harbaugh's got to take the reins. He's got to take the reins off and let him run. And hopefully, I start him that week. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, we shall see. Moving on. So if we look at the standings right now, right, the middle of the pack is all at about 5 wins, right? 5 wins, 5 losses, right through the middle. a few above, a few below. Pesh, hot take number 2. What's the threshold to make the playoffs this year? How many wins?
Yeah,
How many
I
losses? How many points? Where are you drawing the line? We've got 4 weeks left. How many wins are needed to get in?
I think this is an interesting season for me. There's a lot of parity in the season. I think everyone's still sort of got a shot, and I think the difference between the best team and the worst team isn't that much. I think my magic number in the standing line, the over under is probably 6.5, and right around 7 should get you a guaranteed spot. 6, you're fighting versus maybe points scored. I think 7 guarantees you spot. I'm going to say 6.5.
There you go. Bill, what do you think? Where's the line?
I agree with that. Yeah, Pesh, I think that's a good analysis. I agree with that. 7 wins, I think you're probably in. 6 wins, you're on the outside.
So if we need 7 wins, Bill, let's take a look at your schedule. Let's take a look at these 5-5 schedules. Some interesting schedules down the stretch. You've got a tough one, right? So you've got Pesh this week, obviously benefited from some injuries. We'll talk about that in a moment here. Then you've got Mac, who's surging. You've got myself, who's in first, and then you've got Kurt, who just made a move theoretically to improve his team. So you've got mostly winning teams down the stretch. Are you getting to 7 wins with this schedule?
Yeah, I think so. It's a tough schedule, but I've got a lot of positives on my team moving forward. I've got Justin Jefferson coming back, hopefully next week. So I've got, like I said, the Ferrari in the garage, Keaton Mitchell. So I've got a lot to look forward to. I've scored the most points in the league. I'm not worried about my playoff position. So
not worried at all. I mean, Pesh, should Bill be a little bit worried? What are you thinking?
So I think the most important thing that Bill said beyond the garbage for the first few minutes was that last line at the very end. I've got a lot of points. So even if record-wise he doesn't make it, he's got such a point advantage over just about, I think he's still leading the league in points. So he's not going to miss the playoffs unless he has a huge, even losing close games, he's not going to miss the playoffs unless he scores like 400 points going forward. So I think, looking at the playoffs, I think right now, surprisingly, I think Bill makes it by record, but if somehow he doesn't, he'll make it by points. I think the interesting people here are Fenchie and surprisingly Dooley. Those are the two, Fenchie's in 7th, Dooley's in 7th/8th. Those are 2 who might be the ones who creep into playoffs with less than 6.5 wins just by points. If they want to ensure themselves the playoff spot, they need 7. But they may slither in with points by 6, with the points scored in the last spot with the new playoff change rule that we had 2 seasons ago. So I think it's interesting to see Dooley because people might be writing him off, but he's got 4,900 points. He's got a shot by making sliding into it.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah, and Dooley runs through a lot of the middle of the pack as well. So he plays me in a couple of weeks, but he has Sean 5-5, Kurt 5-5, Fenchie 4-6. So if you do believe in Dooley's team, then he will also beat the people that he will be competing with that spot with. So yeah, he's not actually quite out of it yet. He definitely needs this win against Sean though. I think the other
record, I
schedule
don't believe in this team.
Yeah. So you don't think he'll make the run, but at least he has the schedule to do so. I think Bill's been pro Dooley's team. The only other schedule maybe of note is probably Fenchie, who has a tough matchup this week with Mac, but after that gets David DH Dooley. So, we said Fenchie's win last week was big to keep him alive. I think that's definitely true. He's got a softer schedule after this week, and we'll see if he can make that run down the stretch. He'll have an opportunity to. Hot take number 3. So, speaking of some of these standings, right? We have a trade between Mac and DH a couple weeks ago. Mac's won 5 games in a row. DH has actually lost 7, right? But it sounds like maybe there's a hot take in here that DH's team is actually on the way up. What is your, Mac and DH, who's moving in which direction, Passion, and what's the hot take here?
That was an interesting trade. I would say it's almost like a golden trade because there's 2 teams who are both searching, in my opinion. And it's hard for me to say that for DH. Props to Mac. We've said it in shows. In the last few shows, we've consistently given him props for continuing to win after such a poor power ranking start from Bill. And it's the one thing it's hard to come back from is a poor power ranking. Those are your forecasted rankings, and Mac's proving us all wrong, and kudos to him. And DH, he's not winning, but he's consistently putting over 500 points, 550, 517. He'd be winning a lot of matchups. He had 1 300 burger or something like that 3 weeks ago, but he's consistently put up decent points. He's not tanking. He's losing, but he's not tanking. He gets a nice participation trophy for me. I think his team's doing pretty decent, consistently.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, a good trade for them both. Mac it continues to win, kind of to the point that you said. And DH, even though record wise is kind of out of it, and I think he's acknowledged he's a little bit out of it, still puts out a decent roster here and there. So I'm sure he'll play spoiler down the stretch. And who knows, theoretically, everyone's still in it. So, okay, cool. So those are the hot takes, right? Backup running backs. We think the threshold's 7 wins. And Mac's team continues to win, but good showing from DH as well. Let's roll right into grade the trade since
I
it's.
say one
Go ahead.
more thing
Yeah.
to just further say my emphasis on Mac's team. His team to me is like the scarlet letter. Bill's power rankings from week 1 were the scarlet letter that Max put on his chest, wore around the Salem community, and it's continued to prove us wrong. Just props to him, man.
Those power ratings, man, they really carry some weighting, huh? So
As they should.
let's go right into grade the trade with these two. Okay, so we just talked about it. So just a reminder on the specifics. So Saquon Barkley for Rashad White and a 2025 second round pick. Big draft capital coming out of Mac. He acquires Saquon, goes out and gets an RB1 for the playoff run. He has to give up Rashad White in the process, as well as a 2025 second round pick. Rashad White, a 12th round keeper as well. So there's the keeper value there. We just talked about the trade, so I'm gonna ask you guys for a grade here in a second. Pesh, we'll start with you. So from my perspective, a potential win-win trade on both sides. Matt goes out and gets a piece. DH leans into the rebuild. Pesh, if you had to grade the two of these, where are you coming out on each of these guys?
So I think people know I've historically been pretty harsh on Max trades, and I don't mean to be. And Max proved me wrong sometimes. He won a championship last year based on some trades, and this is his move to win a championship this year. And I don't love this trade for him, and maybe I'll be proven wrong, but he's given up Rashad White, who's got great keeper value, and the problem is he's got great present value too. He's outperformed Saquon fairly consistently this year. I don't know what's going to change that. And he's got great keeper value. And then he gives up a second round pick. I think a trade straight up would have been fine. I almost thought Saquon for Rashad might have been a fair trade if DH is looking future. Points wise, Saquon's been outperformed by Rashad White, and Rashad White has much better keeper value. So, I don't necessarily see this from Max. I think if he offered that same trade for McCaffrey, I think Fetchy would have said yes. And I think it would have been a better trade for Mac. I don't think Saquon's going to do well this season. I'm glad, he didn't just give him up for free. But, I don't love this trade for Mac. It's going to be an A+ for DH and probably a C- for Mac.
Wow.
Okay, what about you, Bill?
Saquon's a big name, and Mac is dropping. He's going all out to win back-to-back championships. I don't think that's ever been accomplished in Tree Hills. So props to Mac for going all out. He's selling his future. He's Max out there offering his firstborn child, for these Tree Hills trades. But I mean, you got to respect the ambition. He wants back-to-back wins. You got to respect it. He's not going to have any draft picks for the next 5 years, but it is what it is.
So
do you think Fetchy would have taken that for McCaffrey? And you think he should have shopped it to him?
Yeah. I mean, I think we'll get into that a little later, but when you're trying to trade players, you got to offer them to a bunch of people because it's a numbers game, and maybe Max should have shopped around a little bit more.
I'm sure you have no problem shopping around.
Yeah.
We'll get into that in a little bit, but the segment is called Grade the Trade. So Bill, again, give us grades. We need grades.
That's the segment that we're in. I'll give. I appreciate like I said, I appreciate the ambition. He's going all in. I'll give Mac a B-.
I like the trade. I think it's a win-win. I think it is a lot to give up. I would not have given that much up for Saquon. That's a little bit of a personal just hold back on Saquon, though, and the Giants make me nervous. But I think it's a good market value, strong win-win trade. I'll give it. I don't think you can not give DH a version of an A when you walk away with a second round pick. So I think DH gets an A from me, and I think Matt gets. I think he gets a B+ from me. I have my personal holdbacks on Saquon, but I think theoretically the move makes sense. You go out and you get your RB1 to make a playoff run. So for now, I'm going to give Mac a D+, a B+, excuse me, a B, not a D+.
Freudian slip.
but I do think no. I think it was a win. I texted both of these guys. We'll get into this later as well. I do think at a macro level, I think this is a very good trade for our league. I think it is like good, responsible work by DH to get market value, and I want to make sure that sellers do not have an approach that gives up a lot for nothing. And I think this was a great approach by both of them. So I think it's a win-win trade, and we'll see how it shakes out, but from a grade perspective, but I think it's a win-win trade. Okay, so second trade then happened. God, I'm losing track of my days. I guess yesterday. Yeah, I think yesterday. So Pesh went out and acquired Pesh. Kurt went out and acquired Brock Purdy. A trade with Sean that sent DeAndre Swift and Bryce Young to Sean. So a quarterback swap and an RB2 plus, RB1 minus, whatever, wherever you might categorize Swift in your own personal rankings. An interesting trade. I think we all have thoughts on it. I'll bounce it over. Pesh, I started with you, Bill. I'll go to you first this time. Brock Purdy does come with some keeper value, so he'll be a 12th round to keep. DeAndre Swift, I think, was a mid-rounder. I want to say 5th or 6th to keep. Bryce Young, though, the rookie quarterback, a 7th to keep. So an interesting swap here. Bill, your thoughts off the bat. Did Sean or Kurt win this trade? What's going on with this trade?
Yeah, I like this. I kind of like this trade for both of them. I think Sean might have got a little bit better deal, but than Kurt. But I think they both kind of benefit from it, right? Sean's able to give up Brock Purdy because of that previous trade with Tesh, where he got Sam Howell, and now Sam Howell is overperforming. So all of a sudden, Sean has Brock Purdy, who's expendable to him. So Sean's able to deal Brock Purdy and get DeAndre Swift, a very good, I think he's top 10, top 12 running back, and potentially Bryce Young for the future. So I like it from Sean's perspective. So I'll give Sean an A. From Kurt's perspective, I like it from his perspective too, because he's been really nervous about the quarterback position for a few weeks now with his injuries. So yeah, I'll give Kurt an A.
Double A's. Pesh, what about you?
This is an interesting trade that I'm like sort of involved in. So it's some background. Sean was shopping Brock Purdy around. Me and him were in active discussions for trades for him at the time that this went through. Ours were sent around Mixon. We just didn't get it done. So it's surprising, and back to our like earlier podcast, we called Sean the QB whisperer. He had, at 1.4 great quarterbacks. Bill made a big point about how you can only start 2, but Sean did what we all want to do, what I've done in the past early on in Tree Hills, draft a shit ton of quarterbacks and sell them each when they're hot. And that's what he's doing. And, props to him. He's got rid of Trevor Lawrence. He got a player from DJ Moore who didn't necessarily perform, but he got Howell in return. He has Howell now. He still has 4 quarterbacks, and he's trading off Purdy while he's hot. Purdy had 2 down weeks. He waited. Now he's got 2 hot weeks. He sent him off to Curtis. Curtis took him, I know he has some, quarterback instability, so maybe this shores him up. I'm not super sold on Purdy's consistency. I don't know if he's a great step up from Bryce Young or, Minshew, and I think Curtis thought he was in a good position in running back spot. I don't think he necessarily is. Right now he's starting Rashi White in that flex spot where he could have been starting DeAndre Swift. He's got Watson in a flex spot. These are places where you kind of want a stud running back. So I worry there on his bench. He thinks he's got Gus Edwards, but I think he's come down with Keaton Mitchell. So I kind of worry about those flex spots for Curtis. So I would give Sean an A. I give Curtis a B. I think this is a fairly well delivered trade. Better for Sean.
Yeah. I think, look, we talked about it earlier. I was involved as well. So I was talking to Curtis as well. So I'm going to grade this trade with the context of what I offered him, which is why I have to give Curtis a solid D here, because I simply just don't understand. So I'll get into that in a second. I think it's an A+ offer for Sean. It's the offer that I brought to Curtis, and then he lifted and brought to Sean. So I think it's an A+ offer. I think it's a great deal for Sean. I think it makes a ton of sense. And if he was, already pursuing, then I take all that back because it's a good offer for Sean. So maybe he was pursuing Swift already, but I think it's a great offer for Sean. Clearly, Purdy's fine, but like you said, I don't really think he's any better than Bryce Young. So that part of the deal really baffles me. And so I think Sean gets marginally worse at QB3 to pick up a starting running back. So it's obviously an A+ for me. And then on the Kurt side, I'm giving him a solid D, and that's because I have the context of me offering him Dobbs and London for Swift. So he'd be getting more and giving up less. I guess he likes Purdy. But in that context, I simply don't see it. And the kicker for me is this Bryce Young swap. Why are you sending Bryce Young if you're trying to improve the quarterback spot? Now you're back to two quarterbacks with a marginally better quarterback. Bryce Young's a rookie that can be kept in the sixth, the rookie quarterback in this league. So the Bryce Young part makes it very odd to me, but I give it a solid D. And I certainly, biased ranking, but I certainly feel like I was dicked around by Kurt this past week. So I think it's a bad trade for him, though. I certainly would have taken the trade I gave him instead. Obviously, though, highly biased. Bill, over to you. Look like you got a
Yeah,
comment to say.
I mean, Kurt, we've heard in the group chat for weeks and weeks and weeks, Kurt is worried about the quarterback position. And in order to win this league, you need quarterbacks. So I see why Kurt did the trade. You're right. It sounds like you had a pretty good offer on the table for Kurt, and where he wouldn't have to give up the quarterback at all. So I see
Yeah, the
from your
Bryce Young
perspective.
swap is just a kicker for me. That piece I really, even if Kurt is thinking Purdy's got keeper value, why give up the debatably better keeper? So the Swift, excuse me, not the Swift. Swift makes a ton of sense. The Bryce Young swap just baffles me. Anyways, this could be a good roll into a conversation that we wanted to have generally about the trade market. So for this segment, we're gonna, I think, just talk generally about the trade market. I think there's been a lot of back and forth. In my opinion, a lot of good trades. Like if I take a like a umbrella commissioner approach to this and take myself out of it, I think there's a lot of win-win trades here. So I've actually been very happy generally with the league and like having good responsible trades. So I would like to commend everyone on that. But I think there's also then a transition there to say, what should a selling market in our league look like, right? So in the last 2 years, especially, I think this has picked up. I think unfortunately with the kickoff of your trade last year, Pesh. But as we sort of develop into this buyer sellers market, what is your guys' current perspective of the trade market in general? And then I would also like your take on whether or not this concept of moving high top end picks for playoff pieces is generally a healthy exchange for this league. So I think, Pesh, why don't we start with you because you've been involved in a few trades, your general take on the trade market in the league, and then your thoughts on kind of a future looking, what does this sellers market look like?
Yeah, I think holistically, the number of trades we've gotten off this season, I think higher than years past. Most seasons, maybe there's like one or two trades during the whole season. Maybe right at the deadline or off season, there's more trades. So I think trades in the league make the league more fun. I think keeps people connected. Like you're texting people. I'm surprised Sean's, as involved in trades as he is, and I'm kind of loving it. I'm liking people thinking they need to make trades to kind of give yourselves a chance to like take the step up. I like that there's open dialogue between managers. People are connected. It keeps people together. So I think trades are good. I'll go ahead and apologize for my trade from last season. I don't think it was the best. And I think it opens up this dialogue, to like, what should we do when trades aren't necessarily, best for the league? Who decides that? And I think if you vetoed it last season, I think it may have been a good call. It didn't end up hurting anyone. David ended up still losing. I got some free picks out of it. We do have to set a precedent for what's fair going forward, what market value is. I think each season the market value changes a little bit. I think this season, like, Mac going for big name Saquon, he gave up a second rounder for next year or 2 years from now, and a pretty good player. So that's showing like maybe a floor of like, what McCaffrey, if Fentrey's trying to sell McCaffrey, like this is what I can get at least. That to me, I think that was too high of a floor. I think he offered up way too much for Saquon. But I think we now know that when you're stuck at the end of the season, you can't give up, a McCaffrey for a 7th rounder or an 8th rounder and Deebo Samuels. And, I'll take that one on the chin and kind of moving forward from that.
Yeah. Yeah. And of course, to refresh everyone, Bill, I'll get to you in a second. That trade was McCaffrey and Keenan Allen, right? Who at the time were both top 5 guys for a 7th, and Deebo, who ultimately was turned into a 9th this year with DH. So, you're talking about 2 top 5 guys entering the playoff mix for a 7th, and a 9th. I appreciate and accept your apology. I do think, it was egregious, and I think I will be more open to using veto on seller-oriented trades. I am still very, very, very anti-veto from a mutually beneficial. We're both trying to win, but from extreme selling, I do sort of want to let the league know that, I'll probably have some expectations of what market value is. But before we dive into that, Bill, your take on this year's trade market. You haven't pulled the trigger yet on any trades this season. You're in the middle of the pack now, even though you came in as off-season team number one. What's your perspective on the trades that have been happening around you, and what are your thoughts on a future-looking seller's market?
Yeah, I think it boils down to the question of like, as you said earlier, what's best for the league? And trades are certainly they're healthy for the league. They keep managers involved. Like Pesh said, it's good to have managers texting each other about trades. So you want to encourage trades, but you don't want the bottom dwellers to just throw all their best players onto the market and ruin the balance. You don't want to have to, if you're a successful team in the top five, top six, you don't want to feel like you have to make a trade in order to stay relevant. That's not fair, right? Not everyone has time to be doing all these trades. So you don't want to feel like if I don't make a trade, there's no way I can win. That's
Big
not healthy.
time.
That's not healthy either. So yeah, I mean, I see trades being made, Kurt and Sean and Pesh, and yeah, every time a notification comes up on my phone that somebody else traded, my heart drops a little bit. My heart sinks a little bit because I know that other teams are getting better and I'm staying the same. But I'm trying to make a point this year that you can win without selling off my future and without making big moves. So we'll see where that goes.
Yeah, I think it's been a healthy trade market so far. I think when I see things like, oh, I'm selling, all assets available, send me picks, that shit kind of annoys me. Like I don't love that mechanic.
Big.
However, yeah, however, I also believe in the idea that if you're out of contention, you should be able to improve your team for the future. So let's transition a tiny bit into this idea of selling. Um, if Mac went out, he sent a second round pick. It's a very high pick, obviously. This idea of mortgaging your future, like what would happen for you guys if Mac went and sent a first round pick in 2025 and went out and made another trade this year? What is your guys' perspective on this idea of selling all your picks in a single year to get better? Is obviously that's not what Mac's doing, but
Yeah,
just looking forward a little bit, like where do we draw the line on what
right.
is allowable and free market and allowing people to get better versus enabling a dynamic where there's like a lot of kind of like aggregating of value via trades at the very end at the very top of a season.
Yeah, and this issue initially came up, I think, before this year started when Dan Holly was spamming the group like, "I want Lamar Jackson. I'll give up my first 5 picks next year," or some shit like that. And clearly, a trade like that wouldn't be allowed. If I traded Alpesh, my top 7 round picks this year for his top 7 round picks next year, that wouldn't be fair because Alpesh would crush the league this year, and I would crush the league next year, and that wouldn't be good for anyone except me and Alpesh. So there's a middle ground there somewhere where we encourage trades and we want to see trades happen, but it doesn't ruin the integrity of the league. Hassett, I think you mentioned, I heard you say about your UNC league. Do you want to touch on that a little bit? What's happened there?
Yeah. I mean, we were talking about this before we hopped on. We've got a very open free market. There's a few interesting dynamics. There's an auction component, right, where teams that are selling can put players up essentially for trade auction. That creates an interesting dynamic. But the downside is that we do have a lot of flipping, a lot of like I'm rebuilding to the very bottom this year so that I can be at the very top next year, and I'm willing to mortgage and get to the bottom the year after that. And it is a seesaw dynamic that I don't think is healthy, and that I don't think after a few years of this like extreme sellers free market, I don't think people are generally happy with where it's gone. So it is something that makes me nervous looking forward. Like I do feel like there should be some level of regulations or expectations for what a seller's market looks like.
Yeah.
I don't know, Pesh, what are your thoughts on this dynamic? Pesh looks frozen, so Bill, maybe it's just me and you for a second.
Well, it's
But
like it's
he's
like
back.
when you think about the U.S. the securities market in the U.S., the stock exchange, the New York Stock Exchange, there are regulators. There's the SEC involved, which makes sure that there's no market manipulation going on. So I think we need a similar structure here in Tree
Mhm.
Hills for the success of Tree Hills moving forward.
Yeah, I think like one of those regulations, right? And I think I've tried to be very like my general approach is very anti-veto. I really do not ever want to use the veto, and certainly not for a trade where two people tell me like, yeah, I think I'm improving, right? But I think with the sole intention of like tanking or moving assets from one year to another, I'm certainly more open to using the veto. Like I said earlier, I think in retrospect, I should have used it last year, and I'm very thankful that they were
Yeah.
not greater implications.
Maybe, maybe when we look at teams who are selling, David, DH are the only two right now who are really trying to get rid of assets from this year for next year. Maybe we think about implementing a rule like if you're a seller, you have to you have to be in works with more than one other trade partner to try and get a deal done. Maybe that prevents the sort of, call it collusion or not collusion that Alpesh and David happened last year with them.
Yeah. To be clear, I am not accusing collusion. I'm just accusing Pesh of being mostly lazy and just giving up his picks in the spirit of something is better than nothing. But I think, yeah, I think that is one component of it. I think like I would like to see if somebody is, we'll use Fenchie as an example because I do think Fenchie has maybe turned the corner and is playing for this year, right? But if Fenchie wanted to move McCaffrey, I think that's totally allowable. I do think though that he should be required to talk to more than one person,
Yeah.
right? I think there should be some internalized threshold that's like, an eighth round pick doesn't mean anything in terms of McCaffrey. Like like there should be some threshold. And I would expect it to not happen at the last second. I would expect it to be thoughtful and in advance. And basically, I just want sellers to like be responsible. And this cannot be something that you do flippantly a couple hours before the deadline because somebody is like, hey bro, something's better than nothing. Why don't you just send them to me for an eighth round pick? So I want sellers to be responsible. Yeah. And if you want to sell, I'm totally okay with it. And I believe in your ability to rebuild, but you've got to be responsible and you have to bring it to multiple people and it can't be last minute. Even though there is a deadline, I still don't want it to be like something that you decide to do at the last second.
Just like the NFL coaching tree, I think, sellers should be obligated to, interview or talk trades with at least one minority in the league, just so there's no discrimination going on here. So I think all trades should be sent to me and David, just to see what our interest level is. I think, I think it's a rule that should be carried forward, just like the NFL.
Yeah, the Rooney rule becomes the Patel rule, where you have to talk to at least one Indian before you are allowed to make a trade. It sounds like you already have a bunch of minions in your back pocket doing that, though. So I think that rule's been followed for quite some time now. Maybe as another example of a market trade, just to get into it and have some fun with it. Bill and I we can bring this up because we talked about it earlier. Bill and I did discuss, for example, Calvin Ridley this offseason, right? And went back and forth, and ultimately he sent them to Fentress for a sixth rounder after I had kind of offered a seventh for most of the summer. Trades like that, I think straight up draft pick trades are interesting too, right? Because again, using Fenchie as the example, if he decided he wanted to move McCaffrey, I would expect you, if you're just getting a draft pick, if only a draft pick is involved, like I would expect that you are getting the absolute top offer in the league. You know what I mean? Like obviously players make it a little bit more subjective and you can value different keepers differently. But if you're ever in a situation where you're strictly trading a player for a draft pick, I fully expect the best draft pick to win. There's no situation where anyone else in the league should be able to say like, yeah, dude, I offered a higher draft pick and you went elsewhere because it was last minute or something like that. So Bill, that's not what happened with us. Obviously ours was just an example where you took a better draft pick. So plugging that to say, I'm cool with that. And if sellers trade this year for draft picks, I would hope and expect you are getting the best draft pick out there.
Well said. Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
Any other lingering thoughts on a trade market, right? We probably got to move on here to time and get to the power rankings, but any lasting words for the trade market from you guys?
Maybe one idea is kind of like a minimum wage. If you are a seller, if you're clearly out of the playoffs and you're trying to get rid of your assets, maybe there's like a minimum wage, like a minimum round requirement that if you're trying to sell a guy, you get at least a sixth round pick or something like that, or you give up at least a sixth round pick in order to get that player. I don't know, something like that. Just not.
That makes sense, but I think people can get around that by throwing in a player. So if you throw in a player, then what round pick do you need on top, right? So so I think some rules should be said. It's hard to put that criteria on it because like you say sixth round pick, but what if I throw in a backup running back? Then does it still have to be a sixth round pick? Can it be, or someone sort of value? I mean, it's tough to do. I think a lot of this is going to go on to Hassett and trust into Hassett, which we're going to have to be careful with. We always want to rein in some checks and balances on our dictatorship. So, there's times where Hats is going to be involved in this. If he's going to be buying from a seller. And I think, in the offseason, we're going to have to make up rules to make sure, we got something to make sure he's not taking advantage of it. We like to think he won't. But, some of these free agent bids have been pretty, pretty spot on.
You're back to the free agent
nice.
bids. Dude, I wish I had the engineering or coding or hacking abilities to go in and see everyone's bids. That would be next level. Or maybe worked at ESPN or maybe something like that. Unfortunately, that is fully out of my control. Yeah, I mean, obviously, I hear you on checks and balances. At the same time, I'm candidly always playing from behind as commissioner for this exact type of scenario. So I expect the rules to be applied to me in the same way they're applied to everyone else, and not in a more strict way like you want to apply. But I do agree. I mean, I think like in that scenario, I would ask the same person. And look, I pursued McCaffrey with Fenchie, and I also told him, like, by the way,
I know that.
if you do sell McCaffrey, like, I would hope that you would also go out and get value. So I most certainly will.
I know you
Never.
offered Hawkins and some other people for McCaffrey.
Yeah. Well, what is that? Is that like secret intel or something? I think it makes sense for my roster. Yeah, you're essentially just tattling on Fenchie. So that's a good trade partner you're being now by saying, yeah, I'm willing to tell info that people give me to everyone else, but that's okay. You can operate that way if you want.
Fenchie shops around McCaffrey, so I know what people are offering him. I offered him for McCaffrey earlier in the season as well. That didn't come to fruition either.
Yeah, obviously. I think I feel the same way. I think the last thing I will say, because I did want to make sure I make this point on the sellers market. So, Bill, you talked about you do like the idea of having some rules. I generally feel that when you create rules, you create ways to circumvent them. And unfortunately, I've had experiences with people in the league where it's like, oh, the rule technically says this, like I didn't know, blah, blah, blah. So unfortunately, that's something that happens. And so that's sort of why I would prefer to keep it a little bit ambiguous and kind of force people to be responsible and like make moves that they don't think are gonna be questioned with the veto. So, I don't know. I go back and forth around like rules versus like trying to set expectations or stuff like that. So we'll see. But I do think there are a few regulations like you can always move the trade deadline up a week. You can always restrict the amount of top picks someone's allowed to sell. You can also make a minimum, to your point, a 6th round, 8th round, something like that. So there are some things I think we can do to make sure it stays healthy. But, my ask of the league is, sell responsibly, get market value, talk to more than one person. And while I hate the veto, I will be more willing to use it for pure selling trades. So maybe we leave it at that and we get on to power rankings, Bill. Start of the show. We're probably running long on time, so we're going to power through these bad boys, but everyone's been waiting for it. Why don't you kick things off? Who has the dreaded 10th place spot?
All right, time to power through the power rankings. We just lost Pash.
Damn, bad Wi-Fi. Let's keep it rolling. Maybe he'll come back.
10th place, we have David. We all know this is a quarterback-driven league. And we look at David's team, right? And his 2 quarterbacks currently are Russell Wilson and Kenny Pickett. And that's just not going to get it done. He should have known this from earlier on in the year. So we've got David in 10th place there. Alpesh, Hassett, what do you guys think of David at the very bottom?
Alpesh, we lost you for a second. You look like you're back now. David in 10th.
Yeah, I mean, I think David's been a bottom feeder for the whole season in your power rankings. I think this is one that you've directly hit the nail with the hammer from week 1 power rankings. He hasn't been able to prove anyone really wrong. I think he's building a team for next season. I think he might be decent next season. He's got a lot of tight ends. Maybe we can flip one of them for something for next season. He's done for this season. I don't think we'd argue that.
Yeah. 10th in the power rankings, 9th in the standings. Not a ton of points. Not a lot of clear upside this year. So it makes sense to me. Bill, who you got in 9th?
All right, this might be a surprise to some people. We've got Curtis in 9th place. You look at Kurt, he's currently 6th. He's 6th in the ESPN rankings, but he's 9th in the power rankings, guys. You look at his quarterback, especially after this deal that he just did. He's got Matt Stafford. He's going to have Brock Purdy. We talked about it earlier. Is Purdy really an upgrade? Probably, but he gave up Swift. So he's also got Gus Edwards, and we question Gus Edwards moving forward because, of course, we've got that Ferrari in the garage, Keaton Mitchell. So Kurt, he's currently hanging on maybe to the playoffs in ESPN, but in the power rankings, he's number 9.
Number 9 for Kurt. After the trade, which you did give him an A for, but it knocked him down the power rankings to 9. I like this though, a shock and awe drop out of Kurt. Pesh, did you see this coming? What do you think about Kurt in 9th?
I didn't see that coming, but I can see his team not being as great as you think it is. I think he's got a lot of positional needs, including quarterbacks. So I'm not sold on Brock Purdy. I think he's inconsistent. His only studs are Austin Eckler and Stephon Diggs. His tight ends, Jake Ferguson, hit or miss. James Conner's coming back injuries, banking a lot on Conner to come back. I don't know if he will be the same as he was. He's getting older. He's got a lot of flex positional need, and Christian Watson, Rashee Rice. There's a lot of holes on this roster. I don't love it.
Yeah.
So this is very insightful from Bill, to be honest.
Yeah, maybe a shocking drop, but maybe some good foreshadowing. We lost you a tiny bit there, I think, from the Wi-Fi, but to your point, the quarterback position still looks like a position of need when you eliminate your depth by sending Bryce Young back, and now you're just down a running back. So it does feel like maybe moving in the wrong direction. But hey, 4 weeks left. We'll see. We'll see what that looks like. Coming in at 8th place, Bill. Who's got your 8th slot?
DH is an 8th. He's we look at DH here, and there are some bright spots on the horizon for him. Is Rodgers coming back this year? Probably. So that's looming. He's also got Tua. So if DH can manage to get Tua and Aaron Rodgers starting together, that's a team that's scary. I don't care what other pieces you have on the team that suck, but that's scary, those two quarterbacks. So we've got DH in 8th. Is he going to make the playoffs? Probably not. He's going to be on the outside looking in. It was a really tough loss for him this past week.
Yeah. You talked about DH's team a little bit earlier. Coming in at 8th place, does that feel about right for you?
Feels about right. I think he's had a little bit of resurgence. I think the Redskins offense with Howell resurging helps Brian Robinson, helps Terry McLaurin. Baker Mayfield's been hit or miss. He's been pretty decent. Tua's always been good. I think it's still going to be a little bit too little, too late, but I think he has a pretty decent roster.
Yeah. He's lost 7 in a row. And the first 4 of those losses were bad. They were in the 400s. But he did put up 2 upper 500-point losses. So you can see a little bit of a bounce back there happening. 2 in the last 3 weeks, I should say. And he gets an interesting schedule. Again, he gets the middle of the pack: Kurt, Sean, Benchy. So theoretically, if you can string together some wins, you're beating the right people who are ahead of you. So we'll see what happens there. Bill, coming in at 7th.
Yeah, we've got Dooley in 7th. I want to say that Dooley's just barely in 7th. He could be 6th. 6th and 7th are pretty interchangeable, but I've got Dooley there by a little bit. His quarterbacks, Mahomes and Stroud, they're looking really good, right? Stroud, especially for the future. Dooley needs a little bit of magic to make the playoffs. In his final 4 games, it looks like he's got Sean, Hassett, Curtis, and Fenchie. So I think he's probably going to win Curtis and Fenchie there. I don't know if he has a chance against Sean and Hassett. So I've got him going 2-2 and finishing with a 6-8 final record. I think he's just outside of the playoffs.
2-2, 6-8, coming up from, where's he right now? 9th, it looks like. I want to say I just clicked away. Yeah, he's currently.
I think he's currently 8th. Yeah.
You're right. He got that 4th win. Yeah, so he currently sits in 8th. So yeah, definitely in range. Certainly doable. Some gaps on the team, but he's got the quarterbacks to make it happen. So we could see him surge. All right, who's coming in at 6th? Your last team to make the playoffs.
Yeah, like I said, 6th and 7th here are really tight, and it depends. And I have number 6 as Al Pesh, but Dooley could surpass Al Pesh to get that last playoff spot. It's going to be really, really tight, really exciting. Pesh is right now. My projections have Pesh clinging to that 6th playoff spot despite losing 3 out of his last 4 games. I think he's going to finish the season with a 7-7 record and just barely make the playoffs. But those injuries really hurt. We always say this is forward looking, and now Al Pesh doesn't have Joe Burrow. He doesn't have Mark Andrews, and so I don't know what he's going to do in his quarterback situation.
Pesh, how do you feel about that?
Looks like my Wi-Fi kicked in at the wrong time or the right time. I heard I dropped from 1 to 6.
Big drop.
I missed some stuff. Yeah, I don't completely disagree with it. Unfortunately, when you lose your first overall pick for the rest of the season, you make trades for people like Mark Andrews, selling off some of your future, and he gets hurt. It's hard to bounce back from it. I'm going to see what I can do. I haven't made a decision on activating Jonathan Taylor for the season or not. And if I'm going to look around for trades. If people have quarterback trades, I'm happy to hear them. A little plug for myself. Feel free to offer me some trades. Mixon's on the block. Let's go.
Yeah, I think we've talked about Mixon a little bit, so you've already heard from me there. I think a drop from 1st to 6th. It can't feel good. We hadn't talked about it yet, but Thursday night, right? Obviously, big injuries to Burrow and Andrews, so that hurts. You're 3rd in points, right? So the points tiebreaker will help. And you still have 6 wins, right? So this is a harsh dropping by Bill, but injuries hurt, and you got thoroughly unlucky on Thursday night. So
Thoroughly
bummer,
unlucky.
thoroughly unlucky. Thank you for that joke that I obviously missed. All right, Bill, who's going to jump Pesh on this free fall of sorts? Who's coming in at 5?
So yeah, maybe a little bit of a surprise. We've got Andrew Fentress in 5th place.
Ooh.
He's got a lot of things kind of in his favor. He's got a really easy schedule to finish out these last 4 games. Mac this week kind of tough, but after that he's got David, DH, and Dooley. Man, I would love to have that schedule. So I think he's going to win 3 out of the final 4. He's going to finish at 7-7. And you look at his quarterbacks, Jordan Love and Justin Fields. Maybe not the two best quarterbacks, but Devon Achane coming back, and he's got a good mix of veterans and rookies with Jahmyr Gibbs, and the veterans are McCaffrey. So you'd like to see that intermingling. Maybe some magic happens for Finch this year, and he makes a run.
5th place. Been a long time, if ever, that Finch has seen a 5 next to his name. So power rankings, standings, regular season standings, playoffs, no, not playoffs, consolation bracket. I don't know if he's seen a 5, so this will be a welcome number. Who you got at 4th?
So this is the top 4 now. 4th place, Mac Daddy coming in. Maybe a surprise because he's won what we say 5 games in a row.
Yeah.
So despite his 5-game winning streak, he's in 4th place. His quarterbacks Gino and Jared Goff. Also his 3rd quarterback Mac Jones. Like you look at those guys, and I mentioned earlier how Gino and Goff just put up 250 points. So maybe Mac's onto something with them, but I'm sorry, I can't look at those guys and be like, those are championship quarterbacks. I just can't do it. So he's got a lot of other pieces though besides those quarterbacks: Saquon, CD, Cooper Kupp, AJ Brown. Those are some big name pieces, but those quarterbacks just weigh him down a little bit. Despite the 5-game winning streak, he's in 4th place.
Yeah, Mac coming in at 4th. I mean, he won't be thrilled with it in the standings, but I can see the gaps that you identify. Again, we talked about it earlier, right? Gino and Jared Goff, they don't feel great. They've performed fine. They just you don't feel super thrilled there. And obviously he has a gaping hole at tight end as well with massive wide receivers. So an interesting roster, going into the back half here. All right, let's keep moving. We're going to come back to Pesh and do a recap maybe of the top half as soon as we have them. Who you got in 3rd, Bill?
All right, 3rd place is Sean. You look at his team in the ESPN rankings, he's number 5, but in the power rankings, what matters, Sean is 3rd. Why? Well, because he's been making these great trades all year, and his current quarterbacks look really sexy all of a sudden. Josh Allen, I believe, is number 1 overall quarterback, and he's got Sam Howell as his number 2. They look good. He's also got Devontae Adams, and I saw an interview with Antonio Pierce, the head coach of Las Vegas, and he said basically that they're just going to try to get the ball to their playmakers, Devontae Adams, every fucking play. So I like Devontae Adams moving forward. I like Josh Allen, Sam Howell. I like Sean's team. He's number 3.
Sean at 3, Mac at 4, Fenchy at 5. Pesh, you back with us here?
I think I am. Yeah, I think for Sean's team, I agree. I think the quarterbacks are sexy. This quarterback-driven league. As you saw in the last week's hot takes, tale of 2 days, I do agree. I think Devontae Adams is going to step up. I think Sean's ensured his roster spot with Ty Chandler. We'll see how he performs. If he lives up to a running back, starting position, he's pretty short up. But I think the difference between him and Mac is pretty close. I think Mac has done a lot of good things. He's got a lot of good players that have been overlooked. He's got Tank Dell, who's been on a hot streak because of CJ Stroud. He may be the number 1. Maybe my guy Noah Brown, but Mac's got some depth there. Cole Kmet's not a bad tight end. He's been picking up. I think those two are very close. They both have solid teams that can both of them compete for championships.
Yeah.
On to the top 2, Bill. Break the news for us. So David, Kurt, DH, Dooley, Pesh, Fenchy, Mac, Sean. Once again, it's the 2 of us standing. Did you give yourself the top spot again?
It seems like it always boils down to me and you, and because Pesh is way down there this week. But so it's me and you top 2, and I'm just gonna do it, guys. At this point, I know my team's been underperforming. I know they haven't lived up to expectations this far, but this is the week I'm gonna give myself the top spot. Woo. And this is the week that it matters because the playoffs are coming up. They're just 4 weeks away. So I've got Bill in 1st, Hassett in 2nd. Why did I put Bill in 1st? Well, like I said, it comes down to the quarterbacks. I've got Lamar. I've got Jalen Hurts. I've got confidence in them. I've also got the best receiver in the league coming back, hopefully next week, Justin Jefferson. I've also got a Ferrari in the garage, Keaton Mitchell. So I'm excited moving forward. Hassett, you're in second. I like your quarterbacks, Dak and Herbert. They're great, of course. Tyreek is probably the number one receiver, but you've got some unreliable names in there mixed in. Drake London, is he going to perform every week? Ramondre, I don't know about him. Jordan Addison, Charbonnet, I don't know how to pronounce that. Tyler Boyd, just some guys that are kind of middle tier there. So overall, I like my team. We're excited. Your opinions?
Well, thank you for flagging Tyler Boyd, the last person on my roster, as a reason for why it doesn't look good. But no, I mean, look, we know your team is talented on paper. It's just a matter of if they can turn it around and put it together. I think the top three, I love my team. Charbonnet is a bye week fill-in. If there's something to be said about the top three teams, I think they all have stud quarterbacks. So certainly, see these guys in the top three as well. I'm totally fine being in second if you want to take the first spot. First spot hasn't been kind to people in first in the past. So we saw what happened to Pesh after he took over the first spot in last week's power rankings. He plummeted to 6. So you're welcome to have the spot. But other than that, I think the top three teams make sense. Pesh, do you have any thoughts on this, or did we lose you again for Wi-Fi?
You did lose me. I'm sort of back for now. I agree. The top four is correct. The order can be, negotiable, but who am I to argue with the sacred power rankings? I will say Hassett is probably one player away from being a championship team. I think he's got one need that he needs to fill. Bill's team might be, may have some needs too, but I think his quarterbacks might strengthen enough. But so for now, I do agree with the sacred rankings.
Yeah, sacred rankings. So again, to give them to everyone, we got David bringing up the rear. Kurt, a little bit of a drop to 9th. He gets jumped by DH after a couple good weeks. Bill continues to have a intermediate level of trust with Dooley and give him a 7th-ish ranking spot. Pesh, the big tanker, though, first to 6th. Big injuries, big changing for the forward-looking, official, authoritative power ranking. So a tough drop there. Benchy at 5th, Mac at 4th, Sean, Hassett, Bill round up the top 3. So those are the week 11 power rankings. Week 10 power rankings. On to week 11. All right, so we got 4 weeks left, right? Every week matters. We talked about a lot of must-wins. We talked about the upcoming schedules. Let's get right into it and wrap this episode up. Let's start with Kurt and DH, 9th and 8th in the power rankings. It's got to be a must-win for both, right? Who you guys got? Who's trending in the right direction?
I don't really like either of these teams. The power rankings had DH in 8th and Kurt in 9th, so I'm just going to trust the power rankings, and I think that DH is going to pull this one out of his butthole and win it. You look at his team, and we're filming this on Saturday. He's currently up 12.5. Logan Wilson scored 12.5 points. I don't know. Logan Wilson hurt 3 Ravens on Thursday night. I don't know how many points you get for an injured opponent player, but that guy's dirty. He needs to be suspended.
So I'll give you my prediction. I do think DH is trending in the right direction. So I'll take DH as well. And I think Pesh just came back. Pesh, do you have a pick between Kurt and DH?
Yeah, I'll take DH as well. It'll be a trio for us on that. I think DH's team looks more well-rounded. I think he's kind of starting to bloom a little bit. Kurt's got some holes. I think the trade didn't necessarily help his holes. He's had the holes before. I don't love this. He's not even starting Swift this week. I guess maybe he's on bye. I don't know. He's not.
I think that's in preparation of the trade, I would assume. But you're looking at the roster post trade, right? You're just going to swap out Bryce Young and Purdy. So I think to your point, the flex spot leaves a little bit to be desired. Okay, over to matchup number 2, myself and David. David, your 10th place power rankings, myself in second. If the power rankings are true, this should be an easy pick. But what do you guys got?
For this matchup, get out the sandbags. This is going to be a heavy one for David to endure here. This is going to be tough. I've got Hassett winning by triple digits against David. I just don't see David's team doing much of anything the rest of the year.
Hassett on a bye week is better than David on a full week this season. So you say triple digits or quadruple digits? It's not going to be double digits.
Yeah, I'm not. I mean, look, I'll take myself. Obviously, I like my team a lot better than David's. I'm not super confident this week. It's scary. This is definitely putting my depth to the test, and running back depth is not my current spot of need. So Stevenson being out hurts, but I'm going to take myself as well. I mean, let's really hope I can maintain a victory over David, but we'll see what happens. Anything can happen. Matchup number 2, Sean and Dooley. So we talked about it earlier. This is Sean at number 3 in the power rankings, Dooley at number 7 in the power rankings. Projections pretty dead even, 520, 520. They both need a win. Gosh, I think I've got you here. So let's start with you, Sean or Dooley.
Yeah. This is a very important matchup, and I'm going to take Sean barely. because I do like Sean's team. He's made a lot of trades. It's to be a well-rounded roster. If Swift comes into play and you can put him in that flex spot, I think he's gonna look really good. But Dooley's got a chance by points. And Mahomes, it's a big game. He might lose the game, but he might be in the playoff standings, by points.
Yeah, Dooley, like I said earlier, if Dooley can win 3 out of 4, I think he's going to make the playoffs. If he wins 2 out of 4, like he's projected to win 2 out of 4, I think he's going to miss out. So Dooley needs this one against Sean, and I think he's going to get it. So
there you go.
I think Dooley's going to beat Sean.
Yeah, I think for my end, I mean, this thing looks tight. It's a hard one to pick, and I do sort of like the way Dooley's roster looks this week as well. I think he has some interesting matchups. I still am waiting for Jalen Waddle to have an explosive week, but I mean, you look at Mahomes and Stroud. Something about Stroud gives me a weird confidence in Dooley's team as a QB2. So I think I'm going to take Dooley as well. Okay, matchup number 4, Mac and Fenchie. Fenchie surging, Mac in 4th in the power rankings, 2nd in the standings. Fenchie surged all the way up to 5th in the power rankings. This one's projected as the best matchup in terms of points scored. So Mac's up in the 580s, Fenchie in the 550s. Who you guys got? Pesh, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, so while I have my Wi-Fi, my gut feeling, I'm going to go with Fenchie. I think Mac has the better team. I think he has good matchups. I think Fenchie's going to perform this week. There's something where I think Jordan Love against the Chargers, he'll put up a decent 100-point performance.
Justin Fields a decent option as well. We'll see if he pops at any point this year. He's had a few big ones, but no consistency really. McCaffrey and Gibbs always a good combo as well. Bill, who are you taking here?
In a surprise upset, I got Fenchie. I got, I think Jahmyr Gibbs going to have a big week running all over that Chicago defense, and Devon Achane's back. I think Fenchie's got some stuff to look forward to.
Yeah, so I think, I'm going to go with my gut on this one. I'm going to go with Fenchie. Normally I go with Mac. I think Mac has a better team. I think just this week, I think, Love against the Chargers, Justin Fields against the Lions. I think he's going to have big quarterback numbers. I do like McCaffrey, Gibbs, and Ayuk. Ridley, hit or miss. George Kittle's is, hit or miss, but, I like it.
Yeah. I think I totally understand. This is another tough one to pick. I like the way Fenchie's team feels right now. I think I'm still going to take Mac simply because I'm not interested in picking against what CeeDee Lamb and AJ Brown have been in the ceiling that they bring. So until one of those guys has a down week, I think I'm going to keep riding that ceiling, and I would pick Mac here. All right, matchup of the week, the two of you, right? So, we entered, let's set the scene a little bit. We entered this week with the number 3rd and 4th place team in the standings. So clear implications in the pursuit of the second bye spot, perhaps. Obviously, Mac and I have a little bit of a lead, but the winner of this matchup probably has the next best chance at a bye. 2 top teams, top 3 of the power rankings all year. And we got a little bit of talk about a swift kick in the digs from Kurt. This one was a swift kick in the balls for Pesh. This was not a good injury night. We lose Burrow. We lose Andrews. Bill feels it too. Lamar got a little banged up, and Lamar takes a hit with Andrews gone as well. So we came into the week. This was the marquee matchup. It's been softened and dampened a little bit, which is too bad, but still huge implications. How are you guys each feeling about this matchup for both of you? And Bill, why don't we start with you?
I like my guys. I put us in first place in the power rankings for a reason. I think we're gonna win this. I never like facing a banged up opponent. I have confidence in my guys to go against Pesh's guys full strength, but injuries happen, and I know, and it sucks for Pesh. I think Pesh needs to win at least one of these final 4 games to make the playoffs. It's not going to be this week.
Not going to be this week, so Bill's giving it to himself. Pesh, do we have you for an opinion on this matchup?
Yeah, for a few seconds. Yeah, I always believe in my team, but the injuries have already happened. There's nothing, I can't replace them right now. The week's built in. I'm not going to win this week. If I win this week, it'll be catastrophic to Bill, and we'd all have a pretty good laugh about that. I hope we do pull it off. I'm not optimistic.
Yeah, projections have you at a 60-point gap. The 50-pointer out of Burrow hurts, obviously. 2 detrimental injuries, but anything can happen. And your ceiling, as I've mentioned earlier, I think between Amon-Ra and Travis Etienne both playing as well as they have all year. The ceiling's still there. I still think you'll make the playoffs. You might limp in, you might make a move, and your team might be totally fine in 2 weeks. So we'll see what happens. This is a huge matchup. This will be interesting. I'm going to see how this one plays out the rest of the way. So it sounds like Bill, I'm going to take Bill, if only for the injury. Unfortunately, I think I probably would have taken Pesce here going into it, but we have some hindsight from Thursday night. All right, so that kicks it off, or that wraps things off, I should say, for this episode 4, week 11. By the way, looking at the standings, the way we just picked it, doing a little bit of quick math here. So DH would hop into the 9th, Hassel would stay in 1st. We've got Dooley hopping up, it looks like, into potentially 6th with a win over Sean. Sean could then drop down to 6th or 7th, and if Fenchie does win, as you guys have projected, maybe 5th there. Bill jumping Pesh for the 3rd spot. The middle of the pack is going to be interesting to see how it shakes out. All right, lasting thoughts for you guys. Last word, week 11. What's going to happen? What's on your mind? Give us a last thought.
I mean, pretty much what you just said. I think there are teams, McIntosh, Hassett, probably myself. I think there are some teams that have kind of cemented themselves safe in the playoffs, but that middle is a dogfight there. Pesh and Dooley and Fenchie. Who's going to make it? Who's not? It's going to be exciting to see.
Do you have a conspiracy theory for us, Bill, to sign us off? We powered through some Wi-Fi issues. Are there some fantasy gods that are fucking with Pesh's Wi-Fi so that he can't analyze things properly with us today? Or
it's the FBI agents. They're all on this shit. They don't want me telling the truth.
Yeah, they want to bring you down. They want to ruin your shrunk season through bad Wi-Fi and Burrow injuries. All right, boys. I think that wraps it for week 11, episode 4. Until next week, best of luck to you both. We'll see what happens.
Got it.
Got it.
Or,
Thank you.
yeah.
Bill will cut this. Yeah. Pesh, you're back with us.
Pesh, you gotta get your girlfriend to pay that Wi-Fi bill, man.
Pesh, you got Kurt projected at 490 right now. DH projected at 530. Do you agree with Bill's power rankings and put DH here? I think we lost him again. Pesh, while I got you, let's start with you. Pesh, I think we got your internet. You want to sign us off? Maybe not.